What's good, YouTube? This is BoxingWave, and we're going to discuss two different fights in this video here, and because they're linked to each other, and that's George Kambosos and Devin Haney, which is official for October 15th. This is going to be the rematch for Devin Haney's 4 titles, officially undisputed championship fight, the rematch. All right, and we're going to talk a little bit about Lomachenko against Ortiz. That is up next. This is going to be Loma's first fight back since the beginning of the Ukrainian invasion by Russia. All right, so let's talk. Let's start out with George Kambosos and Devin Haney. All right, I was able to see the press conference yesterday morning. Very respectful from both ends. Different George Kambosos looked very humble. He didn't come in with the shades. He looked like his normal self, like he was before the Teofimo Lopez fight. Okay, I remember when he beat Teo, and leading in the press conference and leading up to the Devin Haney, the first Devin Haney fight, he had changed a lot. His personality changed. I believe that he started acting like Conor McGregor. You know, he had the shades on, he had the long coat, he had the gloves on. It's just too many antics for me, and it kind of turned me off a little bit about him. You know, Devin Haney was still cool and focused on the task at hand. He was going through a lot because his father wasn't able to, who is his trainer, wasn't able to come in to the country because of his visa was being denied. He was able to get the visa, I believe, the day before the fight, so he was able to make it and be in his corner with his son. All right, Devin Haney went on to beat George Kambosos clearly. Right, I think I gave George 1 round. I think another round might have been a swing round, but outside that, I thought it was a very, very clear decision for Haney. Beat him with his jab. In fact, he beat George a lot easier than some of the more recent opponents for Devin Haney. He beat him with just about his jab alone. Okay, and now people believe that Devin Haney has one of the best jabs in boxing. He proved it in that fight, and I agree with that. I think he does. All right, so now we're going into the rematch. In the press conference, like I said, they both were very humble, showed a lot of respect, showed a lot of class. Might be bored by it because it was no trash talk. But, I mean, listen, what is George going to say? You know, he got completely neutralized, you know, and he went back. And you know, it could be a good thing, you know, and I wanted to speak a little bit on that because George being humbled, what does that mean? Does he lack confidence going into his second fight? Just because he took the fight doesn't mean that he's confident that he will win. Maybe he took the fight because the money is there. It's still with a big name. It's still for undisputed. You may not get this opportunity again because it doesn't get any easier from here. You will have to work your way back up. Even though you were dominated, you will have to work your way back up. But at this point, by contract, you could take the fight. You know, you could exercise your rematch clause. It doesn't mean that he's more confident this time around. All right. So even though he's humble, he may be humble in a negative way because maybe in his mind, he doesn't believe that he can do it. But he could be humble in a positive way because maybe he had to do some self-reflecting, realize that he went into the first fight with the wrong mindset, and maybe he's going to work on, okay, this is what I did wrong. I've been in the ring. I've shared the ring with this kid. I went 12 rounds with him. I got dominated, but now I understand what I may have to do to win, you know? And I think that he could be coming in more focused. And I think that there's a chance that this fight may be more competitive than it was before. It's just no different from the AJ Usyk talk. You know, AJ is doing all these things to prove himself for the rematch, right? He's gone a training tour where he's gotten good information for all these trainers. He put Robert Garcia in his camp. You know, he's just doing a different thing, the different strategy, and he looked to improve. All right, but at the same time, Usyk has shared the ring with AJ before, and even if AJ is different this time around, he still is familiar with AJ. So you could say the same with this fight. We can say, well, George, I think he's going to do a little bit better this time around because he can at least adjust and maybe possibly get past Haney's jab this time around. Work on your camp should be working on getting past that jab, all right, and being just a little bit more offensive, all right. So we can start with that, but let's not forget that Haney still has a large bag of tricks. He has a large bag of tricks, and he didn't have to use them in the last fight. We've seen them in other fights like Jorge Linares, Joseph Diaz. We've seen other fights where he did a lot more in each fight because he had to. Where in this fight, he won simply off of a jab. All right, George Kambosos has fast hands. Maybe going into this fight, he can adjust and win more rounds. I think he loses the rematch again, but I think he's going to look a little bit more impressive. I think he's going to win some more rounds. I think it's going to be a little bit more competitive, in my opinion. All right, but you never know. Haney might even do better this time around because they know exactly what to do to win. They've done it before, and even if George changes, Haney is skilled enough to make adjustments himself. I've seen him fight different fights plenty of different times. All right, so can't wait for the fight. Not super excited of it because I saw the first outcome. I didn't really think that it warranted a rematch, and there wouldn't have been a rematch if it wasn't for the rematch clause. But it's you got to remember, and for Haney fans, you got to remember, they're still going back to Australia because that's where they agreed on for both fights. They're going back to Australia, all right. And if the fight is more competitive, which is a strong possibility, you got to remember Haney still has to win and look dominant out there, okay? He still has to make it clear, just in case, okay? So any knockdowns or any times where he might get hurt with a good shot, you got to understand that can alter the way the decision goes if the fight is competitive, even if he's up on points to most observers, right? So Haney got to be focused, and you got to also understand if Haney loses this fight, it's not going to be a third fight because they agreed on two. Just like if Joshua had beaten Usyk, there wouldn't have been a third fight, at least not an immediate third fight. They agreed on two fights, and Joshua would have went on to fight Tyson Fury probably. All right, so the same thing with Devin Haney. Now, ducking. There are some ducking talks going on out there. I don't know why. I saw the press conference. Both fighters have said when they were asked about Lomachenko, all right, because Lomachenko, if he is to beat Jermaine Ortiz, if he is to beat that guy, he is going to be next up in line to face Devin Haney. So there's people out there saying that Devin Haney is ducking. He's already ducking because he said something on the lines of, hey, I'm fully focused on my fight here, but maybe after this fight, we'll speak to my dad, see how I look, how I'm able to still make weight, because he's been claiming for at least a few fights now that, he's struggling to make the weight. I'm sure all of those guys are struggling to make the weight, especially that's the weight you're starting at. You're in your younger 20s and you're still growing. So with that being said, he said something on the lines of, hey, we got to speak to my dad and we're going to decide as a team whether or not I should stick around at 135 to fight Lomachenko. But right now, I am focused on my next opponent, which is George Kambosos. When George was asked the same question, he said, well, that would be a great opportunity and stuff, right? But right now, I'm focused on trying to win this fight against Devin Haney. And that is the way you're supposed to answer the question. In fact, that is the way that most fighters answer the question. You know what I'm saying? Most fighters, that Spence and Bud get asked about each other all the time when they have upcoming fights. And they say, of course I want that fight. I want all the big fights. But right now I'm focused on Sharp Porter. Or right now I'm focused on your Dennis Ugas. I don't know why this is like being, I don't know why this is a discussion. And I understand the weight thing, because people are like, well, if you can make weight for George Kambosos 2 different times, then yeah. But the value of the fight is very valuable because the fight is for undisputed. You want it now. And now you're in contract. By contract, you have to have the rematch. So you have to do it because you agreed on it. Now, let's not act like Devin Haney didn't want the Lomachenko fight. prior to this. He wanted this fight before Lomachenko went on to fight Teofimo Lopez. Now, I wasn't one of the channels that attacked Lomachenko for fighting Teo because I understood what that fight meant. That is a unification match. And at that time, I thought Teofimo Lopez had the better resume and was the more dangerous fight. Because not only can he box, but he has knockout power. And he knocked out Comey in 2 rounds. So I thought that was the better fight to make at that time. But Devin Haney was Loma's mandatory. He wanted the fight. Now I understand that he could have petitioned to fight against the franchise title. But again, like I've always said, and I said this back then, why are we mad at the fighters? We shouldn't be angry at Lomachenko. We shouldn't be angry at Devin Haney or Teofimo Lopez. We should be upset with the WBC by bending the rules. When the opportunities present itself for certain fighters, they like to bend the rules. And we know this. In fact, anyone that tried to defend this have complained about the WBC doing this at some point. And they did it again. All right. So at the end of the day, Devin Haney wanted the Lomachenko fight at one point. Lomachenko passed on him to fight Teofimo Lopez. Not a bad deal, not a big deal. But now, Haney is the guy that has the power because he has all 4 of the belts. So if he decides that after the George Kambosos fight that he's no longer going to fight at 135 and he's going to move up to 140 and fight, whoever, that's on him. What do I want as a fan? I would like Devin Haney to stick around and fight Lomachenko. Why? Because it would end all this talk about who ducked who or who would have won. You know what I'm saying? It would end all the talk. I think Devin Haney is in a better position now to win the fight than he was 2-3 years ago. I think he's improved. I think he's gained more experience. He's fought better fighters. All right. He was hurt by a guy that was able to drop Lomachenko, and Jorge Linares. He had the fights with Jojo Diaz. He had the fight with George Kambosos. There are better fighters out there. Yeah, there are King Ryan. King Ryan didn't want to fight Devin Haney. Teofimo Lopez didn't want to fight Devin Haney. Tank Davis don't want to fight Devin Haney. A lot of these fights that could have been made. They just didn't want to fight him. So in my opinion, before the move up, I would like Devin Haney to take that last fight before moving up. Because there's reward in it as far as legacy. It's a legacy fight. And you could literally be the guy that put Lomachenko away. And I don't mean by like knocking him out or anything like that. But, if Lomachenko at this point is to lose to Salido, lose to Teofimo, and then lose to you not too much later, while he's still good, I think that would be a very credible win before moving up to 140. You gain a lot of experience from it. And if he is to lose the fight, I don't think it's a bad loss. It's not a bad loss at all. You just completely shut out the guy that was able to beat Teofimo Lopez. All right? Huge underdog. You made it look easy. If you lost to Lomachenko, it's not a bad loss in my opinion. You can bounce back, and I think it's just a very credible fight. All right? If he doesn't take it, I would be a little bit, I don't think it would be a duck. I'll be a little bit disappointed because I want to see the fight. But if he wants to move up and relinquish the titles, I know the Loma fans are going to be upset because Loma is probably going to have a difficult time in trying to get those belts back together. I don't think he will be undisputed. I know that's what the Loma fans want, but I don't think he will be undisputed at the point of his career. I think it'd just be too much work, and then you will have to worry about Shakur Stevenson, because if Devin Haney doesn't fight you and he goes up to 140, most likely at some point you're going to have to deal with Shakur Stevenson, who's going to move up at some point. All right. And Bob Arum has talked about both fights, both with Devin and Shakur. And I think if one doesn't fight the other, if one doesn't fight Lomachenko, I believe the other will. And that'll be Shakur Stevenson at some point, who really wants to fight. And he'll be moving up. All right. So, with all the duck talk, let's wait and see what happens. And let's see the reason why it happens first. People are jumping the gun. I don't like, I've said this before on my channel. I said, people cry duck, 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 duck all the time. And I'm like, you guys are not even waiting for the duck to happen. Because what if Devin Haney fights Lomachenko? And you're already posting stuff, tweeting stuff, making videos on YouTube, talking about Haney ducking Loma, and he ends up fighting Loma. What did you make the video for? You creating narratives before it actually happens. You know what I'm saying? Let's sit back, be patient, and see what happens. Just because the kid says, I'm considering moving up next if I do beat Kambosos. I mean, can you really blame him? At some point, Loma didn't want to fight him. Tio, Ryan, and Tank. He's not looking to stick around and do any favors for anybody. Now, as a boxing fan, I want to see that fight. And I'm going to push in hopes that that fight happens. I want to discuss it as if it's an option. But if the kid goes up to 140, it is what it is. Lomachenko is going to be fighting Jermaine Ortiz. And honestly, I do not think this is an easy fight for Lomachenko. I think it's a fight that he will win. I think it's a fight that, he should win. But I don't think it's an easy opponent. I don't think so. I don't think he's had easy opponents. I seen that Richard Comey, he fought Richard Comey. I think this fight is a more difficult fight stylistically than Richard Comey. I think Jermaine Ortiz has proven by beating Jamel Herring. What I saw in that fight is some guy that have good boxing ability that can switch. All right, he can switch. He can fight righty or lefty. He has good hand speed, and he has very good technique. Maybe doesn't have the power that a Richard Comey has, but as far as technique and skills, I like him over Comey. All right, Nakatani is another guy that was very skillful too. Tall, rangy. Not really that rangy though. Nakatani will mix it up a good amount. He was tall and long, but you could get him. You can force him to engage with you. All right, so Nakatani was a good opponent. Comey was a good opponent. And I think Ortiz is a good opponent in between fights. I don't think it's an easy fight, but I don't think it's a fight that I see Lomachenko losing. I think Lomachenko will win, but I don't think that this is just a regular tune-up. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I'm not hyping Ortiz, but I don't think that it's a regular tune-up neither. For a comeback fight, Loma has been out the ring for, how long has it been? Maybe 10 months? Let me look it up. Richard Comey and Lomachenko was his last fight, and that was back in, December. All right, so you don't got a real long layoff. You got about 9 months or maybe 10 months by the time this fight happens. So I don't think it's the longest layoff. I think it'll be close to a year. It'll be close to a year by the time they fight. All right, but regardless, this is not an easy fight. Again, Ortiz is quick. He can box good. He's coming off a big win against Jamel Herring. And, some people could say that Jamel is past it. I think he is. He's announced his retirement, which is cool. But I like the fight. I do like the fight for a comeback fight and a stay busy fight. It's not just a tune-up. It's not a normal tune-up. I think this is a competitive. It should be somewhat competitive. All right. You know, and plus we get to see how much Lomachenko has. You know, I'm sure he's been through a lot, dealing with the Ukraine, and being inactive, and you know he's getting up there in age. You know, and a guy that a lot of his talent is based on his athleticism. How much is he going to be able to still perform? We've seen Usyk perform great at 34 years old or 35 years old. Loma is currently 34. And I think he's going to win. But I don't think the fight is an easy fight. I'm looking forward to his comeback and seeing how he looks in that comeback fight. All right. So anyway, that's my views on it all. That's my views. And can't wait to see what happens, man. I hope Devin Haney. I'm rooting for Haney against Kambosos, obviously. I'm rooting for Haney. But I don't think it's going to be as easy this time around. I think it's going to be a little bit more competitive. But I got Haney winning. And, you know, I hope that if Lomachenko is to beat Ortiz, I hope that we get Haney and Lomachenko. You know, I think that would be a great way to finish your career at 135 and move up, win or lose, you know. And it will give Lomachenko the opportunity to get back in the mix, and that would be a legacy fight. It'll be a legacy fight for both. All right, but it would be more for Loma, obviously, because he hasn't been undisputed yet, and he's beltless at this moment. All right, so it is a bigger opportunity for him. I want to say that to you guys because I know Loma has been around, accomplished more. I understand that. But at this given moment, at this time, Haney is the champion. Let me make that clear because some of you are going to hate that. Haney is the champion. Haney can move up if he chooses to. Do I want the fight? Yes. But if he moves up, I wouldn't be surprised. But it's not a duck. It's not a duck. At least currently it's not. We just got to wait and see what happens. All right? And also, we got to wait and see who he fights if he is going to move up. If he's going to move up, take a soft punch, I know people are going to see it as a duck. See how, whatever way you want to see it. But we just got to wait and see. There's no confirmation on anything. We just got to wait and see what happens after their next fights. All right? Anyway, I'm out of here. Peace.